Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Practitioner Spotlight. Today I'm joined by Mary Hitchcock. So Mary, welcome to this episode. Why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do and where you're from?
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Hitchcock. I'm from not so sunny Victoria in Australia, and I am a practitioner with the AMN, and I predominantly work with horses and horse riders using AMN in a combination of both horse and rider, as well as working on the horse itself and also the person itself as two different complete units. But I also work with AMN with the person on top of the horse and do the horse and the rider at the exact same time.
Wow, that's a pretty cool kind of niche application of the sort of stuff you put out there. And I find it really interesting that you do that. What other stuff do you utilize in your sort of professional practice as well?
I'm also a practitioner or a facilitator in the DiMartini method. So I work a lot with working with mind-body medicine and allowing, and which works really well with the AMN component, because you're looking at the disease in the body or the disease within the body and looking at what the mind or what the person has used to create that, and actually using the AMN system in which to help discover the pathways to the brain that it's actually causing that disease in the body, and working hand in hand to actually literally taking people out of pain, or from pain out of pain, so that they can move freely, work with the emotional motor system in the AMN system. I find amazing to work with people with horses who have a lot of fear that's happened, or a tragedy or a trauma that's happened with their horses, and they sit in a lot of fear. Working with the emotional motor system with the person on top of the horse and do the EMS with the horse as well as the human is amazing.
That's really interesting. So do you find it's something that you apply when you're saying the rider on the horse? Is that something that when you do, for example, like an emotional motor screen on the rider, does that somehow carry over to the horse as well? Because I guess the tension in the rider is going to be different. Does that something that affects the horse, or you're saying you treat the horse as well?
I treat the horse as well. I have a case, if I may elaborate a little bit further.
Absolutely, please do.
There was a young girl who had a very severe concussion. She had a traumatic accident with her horse, and she was in fear of, and the horse was bucking all the time. And they got in contact with me because they thought that if they couldn't fix the buck in the horse, that they would have to sell the horse and she'd have to get another horse that she could ride. So using the AMN system, it was quite clear to me that she was still suffering the effects of concussion. So she had post-concussion issues. So she had lost all her proprioception. She didn't have any time and space. So she couldn't tell actually where she was on the horse's back to actually lead the horse in the area that it was doing. So she was giving the horse very confusing signals, and the only way the horse could speak to her was to buck. So when we did it, using the AMN system, we cleared a lot of the concussion issues from her and did a lot of eye movements and a lot of eye exercises. And when I was working with her on top of the horse, she stated that just by the shifting of her body, she could feel the horse absolutely relax underneath her, and the whole muscular system of the horse completely changed. And she could, after we sort of worked with her on the horse, so we're getting the nervous systems in sync together, that she could ride out and without a buck or without anything like that. So, and they were crying. They were so happy that she'd actually got back in sync with her horse, and therefore the horse is here to stay, which is fantastic for me because I love seeing that. But then I did the emotional motor system on her, did the emotional motor system on the horse, and then I got the young girl to actually do it on herself, just the points in the head, while I did it on the horse. And it was brought tears to your eyes. The change in those two people together
That's
was
very
amazing.
cool. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
yeah.
it's a very
If
cool
you
story.
if you have a look at the my Facebook profile with the photo of me hugging that horse, that was the horse that I'm talking about. And so I went and saw the horse first, and that was what happened when I did the emotional motor system on that horse. She just walked up and she held her head on my chest. Must have been for about 15 minutes.
Oh, what a
And
lovely experience.
everyone was just crying. It was just so beautiful.
Yeah, amazing.
So,
Well, I certainly haven't
yeah.
heard many client case studies like that one so far. So that's very cool. Well done for you um, to put that together and actually, you know, to step even further outside the box from what AMN was kind of devised for, really, and to get those kind of results for people. That's life changing. That's just amazing stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm
horse
also very
changing.
interested. I'm interested also in when you mentioned mind body medicine. Now it's something that I've studied a little bit. It's kind of, if we just give the pretense of it, essentially is the fact that, and please correct me if I'm mistaken on this at all, but the disease in the body, if we could say it definitely has a counterpart, but if not a counterpart, is actually caused by issues involving the emotions, thought, and the mind in general. And when you look to uncover the core disturbances in someone's psyche, in their the way that emotions are processed in the body, and those kind of less tangible factors, you can really radically change and improve someone's health. Is that fair? Is that kind of a very general overview of what mind body medicine acts to do?
Absolutely. And you're spot on with exactly what you have said. You know, I can give you a very basic example of, you know, people who have a lot of wrist pain. When you look at the wrist, the wrists are all about giving and receiving. Mm-hmm. So if we have a sore wrist when we go like that, so we're putting our hand up and our wrist is sore on the top, it's because when we actually can't say no to others and we continually just go yes, 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 yes. And the wrists are allowing us to take notice, to go, no, stop. I don't want to do that. So to be able to say stop to others allows us to nurture ourselves. But when we have pain from the insides of our wrists and up our arm, it's because we're not giving to ourselves. So when we look at working with somebody as to, you know, who is it that you can't say no to, or when is it that you're being able to give to yourself, and also incorporate that with the AMN system, the wrist pain goes away.
That's really what I'm interested in with what you've just said there at the end, and how you incorporate this. Because if I, from an AMN perspective, if somebody is going to raise their hand up and they've got pain on wrist extension, I'm going to screen the body, I'm going to screen the physiology, and I'm going to find where there's held increased electrical charge associated with the stuff that move the wrist. So the muscles in the area, other areas of the body that it might be integrated with, and of course the neurological pathways that are also involved in that. And we do that through touch and the muscle testing and all that sort of stuff. So how do you go about combining that concept approach, the conceptual approach, with the hands-on stuff? And does it really enhance the results that you get? I mean, what happens?
It absolutely enhances the results, because when you're looking at the charge that is held in the muscles, and you're doing all the screening that we have with the AMN, and we're finding those pathways are also created by what it is that we do to ourselves.
Mm.
So when we don't say no, it's the thought pattern that we have within our own sort of thought pattern that creates those pathways in most cases. So by negating the pathway through the AMN system and then having a look at where the person can start saying no to others and giving them to themselves, the pain that they're experiencing in their wrist just dissipates.
That's very
So
cool.
so the pathways are sort of twofold. So we've put those pathways in place, but then the brain is actually working with them as them actually being there when we've actually created that ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing. I mean, the reason I'm enjoying speaking to you now, and I think this is a really worthwhile chat that we're having, is because a lot of people out there, we've attracted a lot of personal trainers into this education because that's kind of my background and how we've spoken about things a lot. We're also getting chiropractors, there's osteopaths, there's naturopaths, and of course I'm sure there's a lot of people out there watching this who practice mind-body medicine. And it's just great to hear how applicable the approach is and how compatible it is with lots of other paradigms. And it's interesting the way you described it there, that maybe the charges that we find often are going to have conceptual mind-based issues behind them, but the patterns that are involved in the body and the charges that remain, they become kind of part of the set point of the individual. They kind of can become the norm, and that's when maybe things can become more chronic and really embedded in the system. And I'm sure you're doing a lot of amazing work by looking at the whole picture, including the mind and the physiology and neurology and everything together to really be able to help people and change their lives.
Absolutely. And looking at sort of how people live, their environment. Do they live indoors? Do they go outside? Do they get, I know you talk about this a lot, sort of getting grounded, getting sunlight. All of those sorts of things also impact how our mind perceives our own body. And a lot of the times when you're looking at people, if they have a trigger happening in their life, they will only ever see somebody either supporting them or challenging them. So the challenge is what we have in our lives in which enable us to grow. But people will look at it going, why does this always happen to me? What is the challenge? But don't look at, on the flip side of it, there is no challenge without support. So in every given moment, there's both support and there's challenge. And when you can get people to have a look in that moment as to who's supporting you, who's challenging you, it also helps change the pathways of the brain for them to see that episode of challenge is on the way and not in the way.
That's a cool phrase. I guess what you're really doing with the combination of this mind-body approach and the AMN approach is that you're really in a quite a comprehensive way, just looking at subconscious and conscious processes and trying to create some kind of alignment between the two. Because at the end of the day, whenever there's trouble in the body, whenever there's this dysfunction, there is usually some kind of dissonance between subconscious and conscious processing. And so to have people like you out there that are putting these paradigms together and to help people is a very, very cool thing. And I'm really grateful for what you're doing and how you're helping people. So if anyone out there is watching this, if they're thinking that they'd like to get in touch with you to book a session, maybe people didn't know that things could be done with their horses, for example, and that's being something that you seem to specialize in, you do a lot of. How can people get in touch with you to go forward?
They can, Facebook is a wonderful thing. I am on Facebook, Mary Hitchcock, and I have a horse hugging me as my profile photo, or they can contact me at maryhitchcock.com.au, which would be the easiest contact for them to contact me.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you as always. I hope to speak with you again soon. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been great to hear about the kind of cases that you've been working on. So thanks very much for your time, Mary. I'm going to let you go now and crack on with your evening. So we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. And thank you for putting AMN out there. It's
Oh,
fantastic.
well, no, thanks for
Do it.
being involved. Thank you.